mindful of everyone's time, we'll probably just go ahead and get started. We are going to record this so that for folks who are unable to join us live, won't get the benefit of being able to ask questions, but they will at least be able to view the recording and get the information. I think, Kai, if you want to get started on the recording, I'll just go ahead. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Fulbright Graduate Degree Award Program info session offered by the Office of National Scholarships Advisement here at Arizona State University. My name is Dr. Laurie Stoff. I am the Assistant Director of the Office of National Scholarship Advisement, as well as faculty mentor. And with me today is our very useful person to know, Kaya Johnson, who is our department administrator, who keeps things running smoothly and makes sure that everything goes the way it's supposed to go. And so she's going to be monitoring the chat. If you have questions, you can certainly put them in there. Or if you want to stop me at any moment and raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask questions, that's fine. I'll also leave a little bit of time at the end of the presentation for questions as they may come up over the course of the information that I'm providing. So as I said, today's session is going to focus on the Graduate Degree Award Program offered through Fulbright. But just to give you a little bit of background about what Fulbright is and the various different things that it offers. This was a program that was established by Congress in 1946, shortly after the Second World War, with the intention of increasing the number of Americans who go abroad and engage with people in different cultures, as well as bringing people from other places here to the U.S. in an effort to foster mutual cultural understanding between our nations, right? The idea being that the better that we understand each other, the more contact we have with each other, the more we will be likely to get along, right? Avoid killing each other. It hasn't worked yet, but we're keeping our fingers crossed, right? But this is the main mission of Fulbright, of all the Fulbright programs. So regardless of which award you're applying for, that is something to just always keep in the back of your mind, that this is really an important component of Fulbright. Most of the grants, again, regardless of the award type, are between 9 and 12 months in duration. So you want to think about that. Like, this is the amount of time you're going to dedicate in your life to doing something associated with Fulbright. They award over 2,000 grants every year, although they have thousands and thousands of applicants. So it is somewhat competitive. The selection rates vary by country. Some are higher and some are lower. We at ASU have been very successful at maintaining a very high selection rate because we in the Office of National Scholarship Advisement do a lot to help you as students applying for these awards through every step of the application process. There are 4 main types of awards available, which I'll go over briefly. And there are about 140 participating countries that you can consider going to through the Fulbright program. So it really is an amazing chance to get out there in the world and do something fantastic. We also really want you to keep in mind that ASU's process for the application to Fulbright is one that has a very lengthy timeline and does involve several steps that we want you to be aware of so that you are doing everything by the deadlines and make sure that you get the maximum benefit of our advising capacity here in the Office of National Scholarship Advisement. So we launched our Fulbright advising season on March 26th when we held Fulbright Day. If you were unable to attend that, there is a video of that event that you can watch on our YouTube channel. We also had a launch event, basically start of advising once the application opened on April 1st. That's when we started taking appointments. So we are now in the full throes of appointments. You can sign up to meet with us individually to start your application process. And the reason why we want you to do this now in the spring is because the application is fairly complex. There are multiple components to it, including a pretty significant statement of grant purpose that you will need to submit with your application that takes multiple drafts. And usually students go through 5, 6, 7 versions of that statement in order to get it to the point where it really conveys the things it needs to convey. As you probably well know as students, good writing is really just revision, revision, revision. And so we want to make sure you have that time, and especially not lose the time over the summer where you may not be as busy with classes, so that you can devote to working on your application. So we want you to start now and start working. We also really advise that you start now because you will need 3 letters of recommendation. And for the graduate degree awards, those should be from faculty members. And as you may have noticed, faculty members become rather sparse over the summer. We want to make sure that you get at least a commitment from 3 folks to write for you before we break for the summer, so that it's not a rush once we come back. Because if you notice that the deadline for all of our application materials to be submitted is September 9th, right? That is really only a few weeks after the fall semester begins. And so it's really not enough time for you to start a process of an application for something as complex as the Graduate Degree Award. And that's why we're starting you now. And then please do note that as part of our process, we have campus interviews, which are conducted by faculty members who are usually experts in the region that you are applying to. And those will be held on September 19th. You do need to be available for those, so just put that on your calendar right now. Block out that time, that whole morning, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on September 19th. It's a Friday for interviews. Those will be on Zoom, so you don't need to come in person, but you do need to be available to those. And what will happen in those interviews is there will be a committee made up, as I said, of faculty members who are experts in the region, who will have reviewed all of your application materials, everything that you submit, including the letters of recommendation, which you don't see. And they will then ask you some questions about what you want to accomplish in the graduate degree program. They will maybe ask you to clarify some things in your application, and they will give you some feedback that'll be very valuable to you. At that point, we will release the application back to you so that you can work on the feedback that you received from those experts. And then the final submission date, the national submission date for Fulbrights, is October 7th. Of 2025. So just keep that in mind. And they do not make any exceptions for late applications. So if you do not get it in on time, then unfortunately that's a lot of work that will have been wasted. So do make sure that you're keeping those deadlines in mind. So as I said before, there are 4 different types of awards. We are going to focus on the Graduate Degree Award, but just so that you know what else is out there in case you're still thinking and considering which award you'd like to apply for. There are English Teaching Assistant Awards, and do note that you are an assistant. So if you're thinking about this award and you're like, oh, I don't know how to teach English, you're not the main teacher. You are just an assistant. You probably will not be asked to come up with curriculum. You'll just be helping students learning English. There's an Open Study Research Award, and then within the Open Study Research Award category, there are 3 different subcategories. One is the Graduate Degree Award, which we will focus on today. One is a Creative and Performing Arts Award. So if you're in those fields, or if you're a musician or an artist, and you'd like to do a creative project, or you'd like to go study with a master in the instrument that you are learning, that is also a possibility through Fulbright. And then there are some country-specific awards that are very defined. There are things that are in specific fields that you can apply for. But as I said, today we're going to focus on the Graduate Degree Award. All 3 of these that fall under that Open Study Research category do require a 6,000 character statement of grant purpose. That roughly works out to be about 2 pages. So you're going to want to think about, and it's 2 pages single-spaced. So you're going to want to think very carefully about the things that go in there, and we'll go over those components in a moment. So as far as the graduate degree awards are concerned, there's a lot of great things that you get through this award. You will get all of your travel paid for to and from the country where you will be studying. You will get all of the housing and food costs. Well, I shouldn't say all, but most. In some places, the stipends far exceed the cost of living, and you'll be totally fine. In some places, they may just about match. In some places, they may be a little less, but for the most part, they're going to cover all of those expenses. They will also provide you with health insurance while you're abroad, access to doctors, and even mental health while you're on the Fulbright. Usually, they cover the tuition associated with the program that you are attending. And we say usually because there are some exceptions. There are a few places where the tuition costs associated with graduate programs are very low. And so Fulbright doesn't cover them because it's just not very much money. But in most other places where the tuition costs are higher, Fulbright is going to cover those up to a certain amount. And each country has different requirements and different stipulations. So what we really recommend is that you read very carefully the country profiles. We'll go over that a little bit when we get to the specifics, and I'll show you what that looks like on the Fulbright webpage so that you can see that's where the most pertinent information about the program is going to be located. As I said, most of these awards are for 9 to 12 months. And you can apply for these under the category of open study research, or you can do the country-specific award. So if you find a country that has an award that really is very specific to a discipline, but that's aligned with your discipline, your interests, then of course you can apply for that. But as I said before, they vary greatly from country to country. So you should consult the program summaries for each of those programs just to make sure that you're meeting all their requirements, that you're doing all the things that you are being asked to do. Okay, so as far as the affiliation is concerned, this is something you will have to indicate in your application. Most of these awards will count admission into the graduate program that you want to study at as the affiliation. However, we are really recommending that you go above and beyond that and make some contact with an individual in the program, a faculty member or a researcher, who will write a letter of invitation indicating that they would love to have you come and study in this program. Just because these awards are so competitive, that's going to give you a real edge, right? That's going to give you just something additional to ensure that the Fulbright screening committee members who are reading your application feel that you will be able to be supported in the program you're applying for. This is a requirement if you're doing an open study research. So if you're just doing an independent project where you're going to go to a country and undertake research on your own, you absolutely have to have a letter of affiliation and invitation from a researcher or faculty member, a member of the institution that you want to be associated with, even if you're doing most of the work on your own. It's not a requirement necessarily for the graduate degree awards, but we highly recommend it. We're really pushing this because we found that in the past, the students who have these are much more successful in securing the awards than the students who do not have them. So one thing you want to think about then is talking to faculty members that you're currently working with here at ASU, or perhaps if you've worked at other institutions, reaching out to them, seeing if they know folks in places in the world where you're thinking about applying for graduate programs so that you can make connections. If not, it's perfectly acceptable to write cold emails to these folks, and we can guide you through that process. But basically, as long as you write a nice, flattering email dear Professor so-and-so, I have read all of your work and I'm particularly excited about the opportunity to expand on your research in X. I would love to come and work with you in this graduate program. I am applying for a Fulbright. Make sure you tell them that. They love to hear that, because what that means is then they know you will have your own funding and they will not have to fund you. And then say, would you be willing to sponsor me or write a letter of affiliation and invitation for me to come to your program? Those often take quite a while to secure. So that's another reason why we want you to start early, because you may be writing lots of emails and faculty don't always respond in a timely fashion, and you may need to wait a bit. And so we want to make sure that you're doing that and giving yourself enough time for that. You will have to apply for the graduate program of your choice in addition to the Fulbright. So those are going to be separate processes. Usually the timelines for admission to those graduate programs will be later than the Fulbright deadline. So the Fulbright deadline, as I mentioned, is October 7th. Most graduate programs have deadlines of application that are later than that. Just make sure that you don't forget to also apply to those graduate programs. And you should also note that if those are highly competitive graduate programs, you need to be solid candidates for them. You can't really use the Fulbright as something of a side door to try to get into a graduate program that you otherwise wouldn't be qualified for. So that's something to consider. And if you are not accepted into the graduate program that you apply for, and you do somehow secure the Fulbright, you will not get the Fulbright money, because obviously they're not going to pay for something that you don't have admission to a program. So just think about that. So the Fulbright awards will always be contingent on admission to that particular graduate program. So one of the things you want to think about as you're trying to decide where to go is whether this particular program offers you something that you would probably not be able to get here in the US, right? So this is going to be part of your justification for why you need the Fulbright funding to go to this program. So you're going to want to look very carefully at what the program offers. You're going to want to peruse their course catalogs and see what kind of course offerings they have. You're going to want to see if they offer other research opportunities or other extracurricular opportunities. You're going to want to look very carefully at the faculties of all of those institutions and those programs, and to see if there are folks there who are doing things that people here in the US are not doing. Maybe they're on the cutting edge of research, because this is going to be part of how you justify that you need to go on this program and you need Fulbright to pay for it. So you really need to be thinking very carefully about that. And you should also be demonstrating that this is really the logical next step for you, right? So you finished your undergraduate studies and now you want to continue. Maybe you're thinking about changing gears somewhat and going into a new field. So you're looking at a program in that different field. Maybe you're continuing in the same field that you've been working on as an undergraduate, and that this is going to lead to something important for you after you finish the Fulbright program, right? So that this is a logical step in that trajectory that you've planned out in your academic or professional career. And that it's a good fit for you. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, that the Fulbright program that you choose really needs to be something that reflects your interests, your abilities, your qualifications, and your goals, right? It should not be something that seems really out of the blue. And you need to be able to strongly demonstrate that without doing this particular program, you wouldn't really be able to get to that next step in your trajectory. So you really want to think about that. So I want to just take a second and look at the country-specific programs that are out there, just to show you like how different they can be. So I'm going to pull up the Fulbright U.S. Student Program page. Are you able to see this? Or are you still looking at the presentation?
Still look at the presentation.
Okay. Let me change to Fulbright page. Okay, are you able now to see that?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so what you're going to do is when you're on this home page is you're going to go to applicants and you're going to go to types of awards and you're going to go to the study research awards, because as I said, the graduate degree program awards fall under that category. This way you will be able to see what all the specific kinds of grants are, and then you can see all of the countries that will offer the opportunity for you to go and study and do a graduate degree. So here are all of the places, right? Then they'll tell you whether they all the countries, and they'll tell you whether or not they offer those programs, right? And you can see within those countries, some of them have specific types of awards like we talked about before. So again, if those are things you're interested in, you should pursue those. If not, try to find another place. So just out of curiosity, did anyone on this call have any preliminary thoughts about where they might want to go?
I'm pretty set on Germany.
Germany, awesome. Let's take a look at Germany then. So if you click on Germany, you'll see that they do offer those awards, right? And as I said, you would, are you by chance a journalist?
No.
Okay, so you would not pick the Young Professional Journalist Award. You'd go under the Open Study Research Award, right? And this will describe the program. And within that category, it's possible to use this to apply for a graduate program existing in Germany, okay? So you would read very carefully through the award profile, right? And it would tell you what's available to you, right? Give you information so that you can go directly to the Fulbright country site and peruse that more carefully. And it gives you different options to look at ways you can study in Germany, right? And then it tells you about the grant period, right? 8 to 10 months for bachelor's and master's degree level, 6 to 10 months for doctoral research candidates. So what level are you at, Owen?
I'm currently in my bachelor's, so I think
Okay.
master's is the only one I can do, right? Because
Okay. Yep.
doctoral, it wouldn't cover the whole thing.
Right. That's exactly right. So you would be at the master's level, right? Then it tells you about the fact that you need to do a pre-departure orientation. That's true of every country. Welcomes applicants from all fields, right? So that's really great. It's a very open award. Some awards will not be this open. Some will say we only want students in the STEM fields, or we only want students in business, right? Or something like that. So make sure you read that very carefully. It's going to differ from country to country. It's going to give you some information about what life is like for Fulbrighters. It's going to give you eligibility requirements. And again, this varies from country to country. However, I will say this part about residency in the host country not being permitted in the year prior to the grant is very consistent across all Fulbright countries, although it may vary in how they define residency. Here for Germany, they're saying 4 months. That means that you should not be living in Germany for more than 4 months in the year prior to the grant. For some countries, this is 6 months. For some, it's 9. For some, it's 12. So you need to really look at that carefully. Our advice generally to candidates to the Fulbright program is not to spend significant time in the country that you're applying for in the year prior to the start of the grant, because that may disqualify you from the grant. I'm going to tell you why that is in a moment, but just keep that in mind. Tells you the degree levels. Obviously, we already talked about that. Also has some fine arts awards, right? If you're interested in that. This is a really important thing to talk about, and we will talk about more about language. Make sure that you know what the language requirements are and that you meet those language requirements if they have them. Some do not have any language requirements, and so they'll have, you'll be able to speak English. Sometimes the programs are conducted in English, especially if it's an English-speaking country. But if it's not, make sure you look at that carefully and that you have those language requirements. And that if you have to have the proficiency level by the start of the grant, and you need a foreign language evaluation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And it tells you the proposal types, right? So you can do independent study or you can do graduate degree enrollment, right? And here's what it tells you about affiliation. As I am emphasizing, you should definitely get a meaningful letter of invitation or support from your host institution and include it. So here they're really saying that is something they want from all candidates. Many countries don't require this for graduate degrees, but we're just recommending that you do that. Notice here that for Germany, they do not cover your tuition. That's a little unusual, but that's probably because the tuition costs are very low in Germany. They don't charge exorbitant amounts of money the way we do here in the US for graduate programs. Then it will tell you all the awards benefits. It will tell you exactly the stipend amount that they will give you, so you will know how much money you have each month, the one-time allowances that they provide, any additional grant benefits. They will even give you the ability to estimate your cost of living. So if you're worried at all that the stipend is not going to cover everything that you need, that's something you kind of want to think about and to see if you can get other sources of funding before you go, because you will not be able to work while you are there. The type of visa that you will be on will be exclusively for study, and that will preclude wage paying opportunities. So just think about that. As I said before, in most cases, the Fulbright stipend is going to be enough for you to live on, so you probably don't need to worry about that. Germany, you might notice it's a little low. Germany is very expensive, right? They're giving you 992 euros a month. If they're going to help you with housing, that might not be insufficient, but if they're not, then you need to think about that. And they will tell you that. So here they're saying applicants are responsible for their own housing, so they're not going to help you with housing. So that's just something to keep in mind. In some other countries, they may say, we will provide you with housing, student accommodation, something like that, or we'll help to locate suitable housing for you. In Germany, they're saying you're on your own. Do note that if you have dependents, Germany will help support them. So that's kind of nice. If you have a spouse or a partner or children, this is something that you could think about. That's somewhat unusual. Most of the other countries don't offer dependent support. So just think about that if that's an issue for you. Then it talks about university matriculation. So this is important for you to understand what their requirements are for you to undertake and complete a degree granting program in the country. And then it will give you information for contacts for folks associated with Fulbright in the region, in the country, the specific commissions, and then some additional resources. Okay, I'm going to just stop the share and go back to our presentation, but I will pause for just a moment to see. I know that was a lot of information, to see if there are any questions about anything that we just went over. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the whole purpose of the Fulbright program is this fostering of mutual understanding through cultural exchange. So no matter what graduate program you are applying for, you should be thinking about how your activities, your involvement, your presence in the country is going to contribute to this mission. So you're not just going there to study, to stay in the lab or the library and not talk to anybody or engage with anybody while you're there. You are there as a representative of the United States, as something of an informal cultural ambassador, and you will be required to interact with folks, to share aspects of American culture with them, and to learn from the folks that you interact with while you're there about their culture and bring that information back to the US. So always keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing your Fulbright application. There are some other things you want to think about as you are especially writing your statement of grant purpose, but also as you're answering some of the short answer questions that Fulbright asks you on the application, in order to make sure that you are meeting the criteria that they expect. The key selection factors that we have been informed of directly by the national screening committees are things like the validity and feasibility of the proposed work. In other words, can you complete the program that you say that you're going to undertake? Do you have the requisite qualifications? Have you taken enough coursework? Have you done the research? Do you understand the methodology? Can you do it in the time frame that you've proposed? So what are those academic or professional qualifications that you have? Again, language proficiency. This is really important. If they are requiring you to have an intermediate level of proficiency in the language and you don't speak a word of it, that is not going to bode well for your application. Your community engagement, right? This is the specific way you're going to demonstrate how you're going to act as this cultural ambassador. The previous experience in this country. So, and notice there's a little asterisk there. And the reason why there's a little asterisk there is because Fulbright has a policy that, all things being equal, they tend to prefer people who haven't spent a lot of time in the country, because the idea is they want them to get familiar with a new place. However, with graduate study and with independent research projects, if you've had experience in the country, it often helps because you know what to expect. Especially if you're doing a research project that is dependent on the locality, right? If you're researching German politics, for example, it would be great if you had been to Germany before and had some direct experience with that. So they are less likely to consider significant experience in the country that you're applying for as a detriment if you're applying for a graduate research award or an open study research award. Whereas if you're applying for an ETA, sometimes they do prefer candidates who haven't been in the country very much before. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then diversity, we'll talk about what they mean by diversity now. Obviously, those things have changed a little bit in recent months, what those expectations are. Again, you want to think about how your proposal reflects the Fulbright mission. Sometimes this is a lot easier to demonstrate with humanities and social sciences projects that are really about the country and about the culture or about the specific place. If it's a STEM project and it really doesn't seem to be related to the place, then you want to really be specific about how you're going to engage with that community. Again, you will really want to think about how it relates to your personal, professional goals. Why is this the best location for you to do this? Again, you really want to justify that you need to go to this particular place rather than stay in the US. What resources does it offer to you that you wouldn't have access to? Again, the faculty that are maybe doing work that is not really something that folks here in the US are doing. You also kind of want to think about that so what factor, right? Is the project compelling? Are you doing research on something? Are you studying something that is timely, right? That has some importance for the world today, and you want to try to justify that. Obviously, the more compelling that your program of study is, the more likely it is going to be funded. Now, that having said that, you want to think too about audience a little bit. So what the National Screening Committee members would find as compelling might be very different from what the average person finds compelling. The National Screening Committees are made up of academics, right? People from universities around the US who are usually experts in either the field or the region of the world that you're applying for. Academics find lots of things compelling, right? Even things that are sort of nerdy and niche that maybe other people, regular folks, don't find compelling. So again, don't worry if you're not doing something that's politically relevant or has something to do with national security or anything like that. That's not what they're looking for. But you do still want to make a strong argument as to why it's important for your field. You also want to make sure you demonstrate that if you were to undertake this program, you'd be able to successfully complete it. So do you have the qualifications, the preparation? Have you done the coursework? If it entails research, have you done that kind of research before? Do you understand the methodology? Do you know the existing literature? Are you well prepared to undertake the level of classes of coursework that you would be taking as a graduate student? Can you do it in the time that it's been proposed, right? The nice thing about most master's programs in other places is that they are usually about 1 year in length. The US is a little bit of an outlier in that we have programs that are like 2-year programs, although we're increasingly moving to shorter programs ourselves. But you just want to make sure, and you want to lay that out. You want to demonstrate how you're going to complete the degree requirements within the time allotted to you through the Fulbright. Again, do you have the necessary training? Do you have the language proficiency? And importantly, the cultural awareness, right? Do you know something about the place that you're going? Even if you've never been there before, we highly recommend that you do some significant research so that you understand what it's like in this country, what kinds of expectations there will be about your behavior, what kinds of expectations to have about the way people do things there, so that you can demonstrate clearly that you know what you're getting into and you have a good idea that you will be able to handle being in a different culture in the ways that will clearly speak to feasibility, that you'll be fine, right? They'll drop you into a foreign country. It will be weird and you'll have some culture shock, but you'll be okay. You'll be flexible and adaptable, and you'll be able to adjust to your new life there, and you'll make the most of it. So again, as I mentioned, the Fulbright is really not a means by which you can try to slip in the back door to a graduate program that's highly competitive that you wouldn't otherwise be accepted to, right? So you have to make sure that you have the qualifications necessary to be admitted to that graduate program. For the graduate degree awards, your academic background is more important than other Fulbright awards. Fulbright does not have a GPA minimum requirement, unlike a lot of other awards. And for things like the ETA, they are a bit less concerned about whether you're a straight A student. For the graduate degree awards, though, obviously, because you're also applying for admission to graduate programs, your academic background and your achievements are going to be emphasized more. And so they're going to pay some close attention to that. Do note, however, though, that you are only going to be compared with people at the same academic level as you are. So in other words, if you're applying for a master's program, this National Screening Committee will not compare you to a PhD student who has obviously had a lot more experience, more coursework, has a lot more research under their belt. So don't worry about that. You're only going to be compared against those who are at the same academic level as you are. And this is something that the national screening committees are aware of and they've been instructed to do. Again, language proficiency, I can't stress this enough. Like if you're not at the level that they want you to be at, that's something you really need to work on. Because it's not only necessary in order for you to carry out the requirements of the degree program and do the coursework and research and whatever else you're doing, it's also necessary because of the Fulbright mission, and that is to engage with the community at large, right? So you need to be able to be talking to people, communicating with people, listening to people. If you do not have the language skills necessary for that, it's going to make things much more difficult. So conversational ability at the very least is something we highly recommend if there is a language requirement, but you will need to submit along with your application a foreign language evaluation, or FLE, to be completed by a language instructor. If that's something that you need help with, we can definitely connect you with language instructors here at ASU who can conduct those language evaluations for you. But you do have to make sure that those are submitted along with all of your other application materials. And again, everything is going to be due to us on September 9th. So this is something you probably want to start thinking about now, right? So if the country you're applying for has that language requirement, try to reach out to a foreign language instructor to ask them if they'd be willing to do the FLE. What they're going to do is they're going to assess your level of language at the time of your application. That doesn't mean that you can't continue to work on your language skills up until the time that you go on the grant. So there's going to be a huge space of time, right? So the application is due October 7th. You likely won't leave for the grant until the following September. You can state in your application that if your language skills are not quite where they need to be, or even if they are, you're going to continue to work on the language. You're going to take classes. You're going to use Duolingo. You're going to engage in conversation opportunities, whatever it is. You're going to watch television in that language. That all of those are ways to demonstrate your commitment to, and especially if you're not quite at the level that they want you to be, that you'll get there by the time you leave for the grant. Again, we really want to stress how important engaging with the community is going to be. Your proposal should include something that indicates the ways you're going to do this specifically. As I mentioned before, a lot of times it's easy to do that if you are in a social sciences or humanities field where you're interviewing people or you're observing people or you're interacting with people as part of your study or your research. That in many ways would satisfy that community engagement. But if you're not, if you're doing something in STEM or something that doesn't involve a lot of interaction with people in the local area, then you're going to want to come up with a specific activity. One of the ways you can start thinking about this is to do what we call the 3 things game, and that is to take 3 of your own hobbies, pastimes, things that you're interested in, and the name of the country, and plug them into a Google search and just see what comes up, right? And because you're applying for a graduate program in a specific location, you could even do it for that specific location. Like maybe there's a nonprofit organization in the city where you're going to be studying that aligns with some of your personal interests and you want to go work with them. Maybe you're a musician and there's a local jazz club or a student symphony that you would like to join and engage through music. There's all kinds of different ways you can do it. Starting at the university level is often the easiest thing to do. Usually there's lots of student clubs and organizations that you can join, but you definitely want to demonstrate how you're going to be engaged with that local community. So you can do any kind of activity, right? It can be things related to your social consciousness, your particular values. It could just be hobbies, sports, music, food, anything like that. You will definitely be asked to elaborate on this in one of the short answer questions. So you want to start thinking about this in particular. So we talked a little bit about how applicants with less in-country experience are somewhat preferred. Again, this is a little bit less important for the graduate and open study research awards. The experience you've had in the country is often of benefit to you to demonstrate that you know something about it, that you have experience there. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's something you can, it can either work to your advantage, or you can, if you don't have experience in the country, that's also fine. It's certainly not going to be held against you. So when I said they also will consider diversity, what they mean by diversity is where you are from in terms of U.S. geographic distribution. So coming from the Southwest is actually an advantage, right? A lot of the applicants will be from the coasts, especially the East Coast. Coming from a big public institution like ASU with a very high admission rate versus, again, the vast majority of applicants who are coming from highly selective liberal arts colleges with very low admissions rate, that's going to give you an advantage. Your discipline or field, right? They like to see a variety of different kinds of fields of study, so that could help you. And your contribution to cultural exchange, so something that you bring with you that you can share, that's somewhat unique and something different from your own background, could also be an advantage. So you want to talk about all of those things in your application materials. So I mentioned before that the main component of the application is a 6,000 character essay. Again, single spaced. This roughly works out to about 2 pages. And what it will do is outline the who, what, where, why, and when of what you're going to do, right? So it's going to give the details of your proposal, who you will work with, the faculty researchers at the institution, why those people are so important for you to work with, what you will study specifically. You can even mention specific courses and why those courses, again, are going to give you some advantage. The importance of the location, the city, the town, the region, the country, to your field of study. Like, why is this a good place to go study sustainability? Are they a leader in that? Why do you need to be in that place? Again, instead of staying in the US and just going to one of the many great institutions that we have here, why do you need to go to this other country? How's that going to help you achieve your long-term goals? The timeline, right? So when you will do what, like coursework, is there a thesis requirement for that graduate program? If so, do you have an idea of what kind of research you would undertake, what project you would do for that, and your preparation? Again, the qualifications you have, the coursework you've already done, the research methods that you have engaged in, the types of things that are going to convince them that you will successfully complete this program. And then you're also going to mention your community engagement, whether that be part of the graduate study program or a separate project. It definitely needs to be mentioned in that statement of grant purpose. So some of the key questions you might want to think about as you're constructing your statement of grant purpose is, what are your career objectives? Why should people care? Is this important? What draws you to this specific program? Again, what makes it different? Why is it stand out against programs here in the US? Who are the notable faculty members there, researchers that you would work with? What does the curriculum require? What courses will you take? What will your academic year look like? What is the timeline? How are you prepared, as we said? In what ways will your study contribute to the Fulbright goal of promoting mutual cultural understanding? What's notable about the location? How will you engage with the host community? And what will you do next? This is really an important component to say, again, the Fulbright is the logical next step in your personal, academic, or professional trajectory. And it's going to allow you to do the next great thing in your life. So really think about how to connect those things together. One thing you can do if you're having trouble kind of narrowing down which institution and which place you'd like to go is to use this spreadsheet. And I'm going to throw the link to that in the chat. Please, if you do use this, make sure you save it under a different name, because otherwise then all of the other students who are using it will see what you're doing in there. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Put this into the chat. So you can go ahead and use that as you see fit, but you see we have it laid out so that you can put the university, the location, the program, the website, what they offer, the key faculty, the reputation, the admissions requirements, all of these things. It's a good way that as you're doing research to sort of help you keep track of the different programs you're considering. So these are all the things that we're telling you to be considering as you look at location, key faculty, reputation, admissions requirements, curriculum, facilities. So like, what will you have access to other things while you're at the program that you wouldn't necessarily have access to if you stayed here in the US? That's kind of a really great way to demonstrate why you need to go to this program and not just stay here in the US. And again, can't stress this enough, community engagement. Okay, so we have lots of resources available to you to help you through this whole process. So I've just compiled a few of those here. Our website, where you can peruse the program. There is a Fulbright tab that gives you some information, where you can make appointments, where you can link to our YouTube channel, where we have lots of videos that you can watch to help you prepare. The ASU Fulbright site, we have a whole dedicated site just to Fulbright because it's such a big program. Again, with lots of frequently asked questions, videos, the timeline, again, which you should really keep in mind, and a link to the US student website that I shared with you before. And so basically, that is the presentation. We are here to help you. Please don't hesitate to sign up for an appointment with one of our advisors, myself, Dr. Levin, Dr. Habza, or Dr. Mox. We all advise on graduate awards as well as other award types. We do really encourage you to narrow down the award type very soon because we want to get you started in the process and help you in every stage of the application. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or anything, any concerns you may have. I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, I had a quick question about kind of the timeline with graduate admissions versus Fulbright. Because I know like Germany, for example, works off of a winter summer semester admission deadline. And so for Fulbright, if I'm submitting the application in October, beginning of October, that would be for that next winter semester, if I'm correct.
Correct.
And
Right.
then, but
So
that
you
winter
would,
semester is pretty far out for the application deadline. For most universities, it won't even have opened by then. So I'm confused how I'm supposed to get like a letter of admission for the application if I can't
yeah.
apply to those programs yet.
Right. It's not a letter of admission. It's a letter of affiliation slash invitation. In other words, it's
I
a
see.
letter from some faculty member or researcher at the institution saying, we would love to have this person come and work
Mhm.
with us. That person is not responsible for admissions usually. Uh, However, if you have a contact like that who's already seen some of your work, the likelihood you would be admitted is much higher, right? You should really do this anyway for graduate programs, even in the US, regardless of whether you're applying for Fulbright or not. It's a really good way to help your chances of admission, right? If you reach out to the faculty there and say, I'm a big fan of your work. I'd love to come and work with you further and learn from you because you're the leading expert in this. So yeah, really, it's just a letter from an individual who is affiliated with that institution saying that they would love to have you there, right? So it's not a letter of admission.
But the Fulbright is contingent on you getting into that university specifically, right?
Correct.
So what if you're in a situation where, obviously I'm probably going to apply to multiple universities for this grant, but I don't think it makes sense to write about multiple universities in my actual Fulbright application. But hypothetically, if I were to get the Fulbright, but then not get into the university I talked about, but got into another university in Germany for the same subject, but a different field, like where does that lie?
So your Fulbright application is going to be specific to the institution that you've chosen. So what I
Okay.
would highly recommend is that do that for your top choice. Do that for the place that you are the most interested and can make the strongest and most compelling argument. And that's not going to be the same for every university, right? So choose the one that you are really the most interested. If you don't get accepted, usually the Fulbright is not transferable, but it might be possible to write to the German Commission and explain your situation and see if they'd be willing. At that point, it's difficult because the letter of affiliation and invitation is going to be from a person from the other institution, right? So they're
Right.
less convinced of the feasibility. So
It does seem like a little
yes,
bit of a hard trade-off then, because I'll have to pick between maybe a more prestigious university I'm more interested in, but also weigh whether I'd get admitted to that program. Because my worst case scenario is that you put in all this work and you get a Fulbright for a program that you don't get admitted to, even though you're admitted to another one.
yeah,
So I don't know the balance there, but
yeah. I mean, it's really you have to kind of figure that out. What's your priorities? Yeah, unfortunately, Fulbright has no control over whether you're admitted to the program or not. Our advice is to apply to a program that you have a very good shot of being accepted to, right? But
right.
also one that is really going to give you the things that you need.
And then another question is regards to the letter of recommendation. Do they have to be faculty or could they also be like PhD students, for example?
We do not recommend that you have PhD students write for
Okay.
you. We really do recommend that the letters come from faculty. Although, if the PhD student is pretty advanced and maybe has taught you in courses or worked with you on
Hmm.
research, or if did you do the Dodd Rise program?
Yeah. So I was
So in
thinking about
that
that
case,
PhD student.
yes. That would actually be one of the exceptions. We would say that because you worked in that PhD student's lab, they're going to be able to speak very specifically to your abilities.
Mhm.
And because that's a dot Rise is a German sponsored program and they're very familiar with it, that would probably not, that would be fine.
Sweet.
Any other questions?
Let me ask you about so I was looking at Switzerland and the program I'm looking at, well, the school, University of Zurich or something like that. And they have a center there that studies my area of interest. Um, and I'm trying to figure out like, so I think when I looked up Switzerland, it showed you could either go in as a bachelor's or as a PhD, something like that. But for the Fulbright. But so let's see. The problem is if you go in for a PhD, then you're only going to get 1 year of funding, I guess.
That's correct.
Mm.
So most PhD students use the Fulbright in order to complete their field research, right? To get the money to go to the place where they're going to need to spend significant time doing research. Usually the graduate study awards are applied to master's programs. So it's the Open Study Research Award, I think, is usually more suitable to PhD students. For you, Josh, you're probably going to want to go into a master's program. Have you graduated? You haven't graduated yet, have you?
No, and the PhD I think is in English, and the masters I think are in like German or.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say hold off. You can apply for Fulbright multiple times. There's no limit. So at this stage of your academic life, I would say, the master's degree program would probably be better for you. And then once you get to that point, and that's a bit down the road, right? So you have to have completed all your PhD coursework, and usually you will have already taken your comps and your ABD, right? All but dissertation. And then you need money to go and do your research, your field research. That's when you would apply for the Fulbright to give you that funding.
Actually, that really helps because that's kind of what I was looking for. Is I was looking for the main thing was I didn't want to do a whole PhD in. Are you hearing an echo or is that just me?
I'm not hearing echo now.
Okay. So the main thing, like with the PhD, is I wanted to do a PhD in the United States, but I probably want to spend a year in Switzerland to study that topic, which is in the world is most centrally located in Switzerland. I think it would be better if I did the PhD in the United States, but it would be good to spend a year there just to get there, sort of do to walk around and look at watch their elections. It's sort of an area I'm interested in, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and to, spend time with people that live there, spend time with professors there, and sort of, it's different than it is in America, sort of the thing I'm looking at. So, okay, that's really good to know that basically this could be used exactly for that as part of a PhD. So maybe I
Yep.
should hold off using it for that. Because the other thing I was considering was doing, like you mentioned, I guess the open research or whatever. So post,
Mm-hmm.
after graduating as an undergrad, go there for a year and doing research. But it sounds like what you're saying is that money is most likely to be approved better once you're a PhD.
No, not necessarily. If you have a really well developed research project that you want to undertake now, and you can demonstrate again that you have somebody at an institution in the country that is going to support you for that, you absolutely have to have a letter of affiliation, and that the project is something necessary for you to do in order for you to get to the next step. Like maybe you really need to learn how to do that kind of research before you even enter a PhD program. That is something that you could definitely do. What I was saying was that what you were suggesting about going to study as a PhD is not as fortuitous, just because, as you said, they only pay for 1 year, and PhD programs are going to be more than 1 year. So unless you have your own funding that's going to pay for the remaining years, it's probably better for you to use it at the PhD level to do the field research for your dissertation. And that is how a lot of students use it. But you certainly can do an independent research project with just a bachelor's degree in hand. If you demonstrate that you really thought about it, that you have a good solid methodology, that you have good research questions, that it's something that you can demonstrate as compelling, and that you get that affiliation. We have lots and lots of students who propose those kinds of projects. It's particularly beneficial for students in STEM fields who feel like they maybe haven't done enough of the sort of research elements. Like maybe they've got lots of coursework. They haven't been fortunate to be like Owen and go on the Dodd program and work in a lab like they have, and they need a little bit more research experience, and they want to do that before they enter into a graduate program. They certainly can do that. So there are a lot of options, but using the Fulbright to pay for a PhD, like the coursework part of the PhD, is probably not the best.
Yeah, no, this is really helpful because I was just thinking graduate, then the only option was graduate and then say the year after that do this open research thing. But I like the idea better of going there, doing the PhD, and while in the middle of the PhD, or like you said, OBD or whatever you call it, ABD.
ABD, right?
Then do that year. So this was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry about the academic lingo. We love acronyms, right?
One final question for intake.
Sure.
I see there's 3 people available, including you. Would you recommend someone specifically, maybe who has knowledge about the German programs / .rise and or STEM research, like within computer science, just of you 3, or does it
I mean,
really
we'll
matter?
we'll all be able to help you. None of us are STEM specialists, so I'm a historian. Dr. Levin is an anthropologist, and Dr. Mox is an English has an English PhD. So what we recommend for that is to get a faculty mentor in your field who can help guide you through. So talk to the folks that you have been working with here at ASU. Talk to your PhD supervisor that you are under in Dodd. Get their feedback. They're going to be able to give you much better information and much better guidance in terms of writing the proposal that's specific to your discipline. We highly recommend for all students who are applying either to the Graduate Study Award or to the Open Research Award to have a faculty mentor in their discipline. However, having said that, you should also note that the audience that you're writing for in the National Screening Committee may not be specialists in your field, and likely will not be specialists in your field. And so you want to be able to write the proposal so that it is understandable to an educated non-specialist, right? Someone with a PhD, but not necessarily a PhD in your field. And so you want to avoid jargon and lingo that's specific to your highly technical language that only other computer sciences would understand. However, the faculty mentors or maybe that PhD student from the Dodd program can help you get the technicalities that you need, but then we'll help you write it in such a way so that it's the strongest Fulbright application, right? So we are writing specialists and we're Fulbright specialists, but we are not disciplinary specialists.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Any other questions? We are a little bit over time. I appreciate you all hanging out. We will be posting this recording on our YouTube site. So if you want to ever go back, and also you can share it with your friends who are maybe looking to get more information about the graduate degree program through Fulbright and weren't able to attend today. But if not, I thank you all for joining us on this Friday afternoon, and I hope you stay cool. I think we're going to hit 100 again today, so good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.